In this first demo, I want to review some of the data binding fundamentals before we dive into more advanced aspects throughout the rest of the course. The data model we'll be dealing with throughout the course is based around a pizza ordering company. So we have customers as a primary object, customers have orders, orders have order items are related to products, orders have an order status, and we probably won't get much deeper than that in the data model for the demos that we'll be doing. Now you can see in this demo I'm using an Entity Framework Database First EDMX data model, partly so you can visualize the schema here. In later demos I'll mostly be using Entity Framework Code First. The UI that we'll be using in this demo is a simple crude data form here. At the top we have some current customer information, a customer ID as a label, and a customer name as a text box. Then we have a recent orders list, which is a list box that's going to be populated with dates. And when we select a date there, down at the bottom in a data grid, we're going to see the order items associated with that order. We've got a save button here so that we can modify the customer name and save it off to the database. And we'll add some other fields as we go here to save off other modifications to the customer. Now really a good starting point when it comes to considering data binding is to think about what does the code need to be to support a data form like this when you don't have data binding. If we drop into the code behind here, we can see that we've got our main window here. We're newing up an instance of our object context, our data model. We've got a loaded event handler hooked up. And in that event handler, we go out through our object context, execute a query to get the first customer in the customer's collection. Then comes the part that gets really tedious about not using data binding, is we have to go field by field and grab out values of properties on our data object, our customer in this case, and push them into properties on the corresponding elements in our UI, such as the content property on a label or the text property on a text box. Next, you can see I'm executing a query to go get the orders for that current customer and selecting just the order date, so we end up with a list of date time objects that we set as the item source property on our list box. We also have a selection changed event handler hooked up to the list box, and that's down here. And here you can see we're basically going out and executing a query against the database to go to the orders collection, get the related child order items, and using a select criteria that the order date matches the one selected in the list box, and the customer ID matches the one that is the current customer based on our customer ID label. You can see one of the other downsides to doing it this way is that things like selected item and content are declared as objects, so they can contain anything. So you end up having to do a lot of casting as you move things in and out of those control properties. Once we have the order items, we put those as the item source on our data grid to drive that. And then for our save button, you can see that we're going out and re-retrieving that customer based on the customer ID. We could have likewise held on to that customer after we first retrieved it in a form member variable. Once we have the customer, now we have to do some pulling of values from individual properties on the controls in the UI and putting those into individual properties on the customer object, and then eventually going off and saving. And the comments are here just to emphasize that you have to do this on a property by property basis for your entity because of the fact that you're just pushing and pulling discrete values into the properties of controls on the UI. But with that code in place, we can in fact run this form. And we can see we have our current customer at the top. We can modify that customer. I'll get rid of the 42 here. Click Save, close the form, start the app back up, and our modification was in fact persisted. When we select an order, we get the table populated down below. Now there's some nasty stuff there because it's doing auto-generate columns. So we're getting these related objects just getting dumped with their type information. Here's the meaningful order item information over here with the related IDs, quantities, unit prices, and so on. And we can see that that changes based on the selection up above. So the good news is it's fully functional, but we have to do all this pushing and pulling of values in our UI. And you'll see that we can be a lot more efficient by data binding. So in the next demo, we'll see how this can get better by using data binding instead.